in the life-changing power of education. We are AIA Holdings.
Receive money from anywhere in the world. Western Union now available at Ceylon Bank.
Chilling with Russell. Hi. Hey, what's up? Throwing some stuff out of the window. It's a Sunday and it's a good day. We're doing something different today. We've got a completely different sport we're talking about. We're talking about rugby, and we got former All Blacks player and current legend. I don't think that man will lose his status on any given day anyway. He's one of the best and one of the... I'm a huge fan. He appeared on the screen a while ago. I didn't know what to say. But Russell is there. Russell always has plenty of words to say. ඒ වගේම ඔයගොල්ලෝ WWE fans නම් SummerSlam බැලුවද කොහොමද edge ගේ entrance එක? Right, moving on. Shihab, I want to say hello to you. My Vlogs, hello. And of course, Sandeep, Dilshan, hello. Good to have you guys on board. Russell, with that introduce කරන අලුත්ම ක්‍රමයක් තියෙනවා. So I don't have to say much. I've just got to do my thing. I'm going to let that happen right now. Before we bring the legend on screen, take it over.
And that's in the air.
The guru of greatness. The mantra of madness. The man with the plan. The only one who can. Russel Arnold. The granddaddy of chili. The lover of all types of pudding. He does not talk pudding yachting. He gets to the point thudding bidding. Introducing Russel Arnold. We don't just chill, we create a buzz. Because chilling with Russell is better than getting into trouble.
Evening all, Sham. That was a nice one, but I didn't like your comment before. You calling me a big mouth?
No, I'm calling you a chatterbox. You're never short of words, you know. You got it. Yes,
but,
you're not frazzled.
I'll tell you what, our friend who's coming on to join us today, well, he's got a lot to say and a great sense of humor too. Let's not waste any time.
Absolutely. Let's get him on. Who's getting him on?
You. That's what you're there for.
Chilling with Russell.
But Matang, how are you?
Hi guys, nice to get my ugly face on the screen. I don't have any catch titles and stuff like that. Russell, I was waiting for yours to come up as the Queen of Quarantine. But,
yes. We are professional bums, aren't we? Wasting so much time in hotels. I know you also have been traveling a bit lately with the Super Rugby. Short trips though, isn't it? You've been to New Zealand and back. But you've been having a good time.
Look, I haven't had to go through quarantine yet myself. So as soon as all the travel got more restricted, we just shut down and start doing it out of the studio and trying to sound as excited as if we're at the game. So I haven't gone through what you're going through at all, mate. So I've had it pretty easy.
I've been watching the rugby here. That's what's been keeping me going. You've been sounding so good, and you've been cheating.
No. We are actually watching the game. Sometimes it might not seem like we are from some of the comments, but it's actually sometimes more exciting. Sure, we're not at the stadium, but we've got 6 or 7 screens going on at one time, and all sorts of access to Coca-Cola and stuff like that. So it's pretty easy.
Well, we got another friend joining as well too. He loves his rugby. He's met you also in Japan during the World Cup. So let's get him on and let's talk rugby.
Chilling with Russell. Hey, Shanaka.
Boys now.
Hi, guys.
There's an
This is Shanaka.
I want to take before I run. and I'll leave you guys to it. Russell used to play fly half, I think. Sri Lanka missed a rugby legend by coming into cricket. Is that true?
No. We used to play a lot of touch rugby. That's what I could do. It used to be our warm-up sport at any stage, but never did play. Shanaka, of course, is a referee, and generally he gets chants from us. We used to call him referee Hora. That's the chant we used to shout out. Hora means cheat. So that's.
Well, I only really know Machang, and I don't think any referee has ever called me Machang because they didn't like me much at all.
Oh, you're very popular. Why not? You were not one of those ruffians, were you?
I wasn't a ruffian, mate, but I think I was a bit aggressive with my mouth at the referees. So the best time they had with me was when I retired, and they realised I was never going to be in the air again on the field.
You mentioned
worse than Marshy.
Marshy was a lot more physical at playing at number 9 at halfback. He was doing all the physical stuff, and I was just doing all the yappity yap. So, horses for courses, really.
You played a lot with Marshall, didn't you? Listening to him, he's also got a lot to say about the sport, and it's very interesting as well. And lately, it's you who I hear for the New Zealand point of view. It's good fun. How did you two gel? Who was louder?
Well, it's funny, actually. People thought we played together for a long time, and I always say that we actually were quite a lot like a married couple. We argued every day and we never had sex. So we were both fairly strong, I think, personalities in terms of within the team and determined and thought we were right all the time. I've really enjoyed the times that I did work alongside him in the commentary box. You know what it's like. You get a relationship. You get a relationship with your teammates on the field. You get a relationship with your teammates in the commentary as well. And I really enjoyed working with him. He's the main kind of guy in New Zealand with Sky, with the test matches and stuff. So when I was coming in, I was just an accessory, really, and happy to play that role. And he was very, very good. So we get on very well. It's a real problem, though, when we do catch up, because there's always so much to catch up on. It's never really an early night when we finally get the chance to catch up.
Yeah. Growing up, we used to watch a lot of rugby in Sri Lanka, and it's the All Blacks, isn't it? Fair to say that, Shanaka? And Grant Nisbet was my favorite voice at that stage, and it was a privilege when I came over to New Zealand to work. And games in Wellington, here he was doing the cricket, utter professional and fantastic to listen to as well.
From my point of view, guys, Grant Nisbet and Ian Smith, New Zealand have two of the best professionals in cricket and rugby ever, I think.
Yeah, they're lovely guys. And what I loved about Ian Smith is he's obviously played cricket, to the highest level. And so he doesn't try to know everything about rugby, but he brings a real sports person's angle, which you can apply to any sport really without knowing the ins and outs. But he makes the right kind of, he's beautifully in between someone who's a real rugby head and wants to know all the ins and outs of rugby and someone who knows nothing about rugby, and he bridges that so beautifully for people as well. And if I could do the same thing at cricket, I would love to do that, but I don't think I could. Seems like a pretty cushy gig though, commentating cricket games though, Russell.
Oh yeah, man, you can actually average 200. You can say something now, correct it a while later, but it's a total different game when we are playing because no room for mistakes and the pressure is on. We can get away with it in the comm box, and I wish I probably average 10 times less when playing cricket. On that note, growing up, did you play cricket? Because in New Zealand, that's the culture, isn't it?
No, I actually wish I had, because I love team sport, but I was always a tennis player. So I was in a little country town in New Zealand, a little Māori town called Tuahiwi, and everyone in New Zealand in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, everyone played rugby basically, but not everyone played cricket. So we didn't have numbers for a cricket team, so I played tennis. And I always was scared of a hard ball to this day. Like if I play the odd charity cricket game, I get pretty scared if that ball, and it doesn't even have to be coming down very fast, and I'm pretty scared of it. And I'm also scared of charity cricket games now, because the last one I played was at the SCG in Sydney in February. And, from watching rugby, I was never a very physical guy, so I never used my shoulders much. I never did much damage to my shoulders. But I dived for a ball stupidly in the covers on the SCG and dislocated my shoulder for the first time in my life back in February. So I'm even more scared of cricket now, to be fair.
And we actually met at the SCG, spending a night out. One night we were raising money for the homeless children in Australia, and the idea was for all of us to sleep out on the SCG in cardboard boxes. It was a starry night, a beautiful night, and we made lots of friends that day. But the next charity game that I'm playing in Sydney, you're in. You better show up. A batting for change game.
For laughter value only, and to make everybody feel a lot better and more athletic about themselves, I think. But yeah, I remember that back. I mean, was that last year? It's hard to tell in COVID now, isn't it, whether it was even last year or the year before. It was last year, though, wasn't it, Russell? And
yes.
I took a photo with you and with Phil Emery, and I think Trevor Chappell might have been there as well. And I said, look, no shame in being the fourth best cricketer in this photo.
Benny Elias was there. Benny, there were a lot. Mitch Stark. Luckily, he was not in the photo. There would have been 5 or 6 because his wife gets in there too, right, Elisa?
True. It's actually funny. The connection. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, speaking of cricket and rugby, Mehrtens, is it true? Can you confirm the legend that Baz McCullum actually kept Dan Carter out of the Canterbury schoolboys side?
I'm not sure what team it was because I'm pretty sure Baz was down in Dunedin somewhere at school, and that explains a fair bit. But yeah, I'm pretty sure there was a team that he kept Dan Carter out. He's a very, very good fly half. And I was just going to say that before, actually, the connection, particularly in a small country like New Zealand, where there's one major sport in each season, the inevitability is that you play the both. I didn't, but guys like, I played rugby against Stephen Fleming. So it's funny how many big cricket guys played fly half in rugby. Stephen Fleming was one who I marked. He played for a horrible club in Christchurch called Sydenham. We lost to them, and we were the 2 top teams in under 16s, and so he got the last laugh there. Jeff Allett, the year before I played in my school first 15, Jeff Allett was first 5/8 for that team, and I think the year or 2 years before him was Chris Cairns. So, there's a long history of cricketers having excelled at rugby. Like I say, because we're a small country, everyone's got to play everything.
Hansi Cronje as well, I think, played cricket and rugby. I think he was a number 8. Kieran Reid opened the batting for his school team, I think. And Russell played touch.
I played touch too, don't worry about that.
Well, that's the only thing we can play. But right now, you can't hit gaps because your hammies go. You just do just the up and down stuff just to play it safe. Coming back to the real stuff. You guys chickened out of traveling the Kiwis. We were looking forward to watching the rest of the Bledisloe and the Rugby Championship match. What are your thoughts there?
Look, I was disappointed too, but I just don't think it's been articulated well in public, their reasons. And I think it was going to be a struggle in Western Australia because obviously for New Zealand, there's been a big breakout. Now, our numbers in New Zealand pale into insignificance compared to other countries, but it's still bad enough for New Zealand to say, look, we've got to shut the place down. I don't think they were going to be allowed an easy way into Perth from the Premier over there. I gather that they're now all talking in Queensland, and that's the preferred option, that everybody comes into Brisbane. I think they're looking at allowing, South Africa and Argentina to come in as well and have it all based in Queensland. I mean, at the end of the day, it's great that they're even trying to get the competition done. So much of the world has been in turmoil, and live sport has been, in most places around the world,
fresh air.
It's been the thing that's kept people sane at home watching live sport. So it is important for the sports to get things played. So they're working pretty hard on it. But yeah, I was disappointed. I was supposed to be across in Perth. In fact, I would have. With the original schedule, I would have been just flying home today, I'd suspect, with a very sore head.
Oh, yeah. Because the thing with the live sport since you mentioned, it's giving us something to talk about, some banter. Just as I said, in the past, we used to have a go at Shanaka saying referee, hurrah, or whatever. It just gives us a bit of a lift. Otherwise, we're totally flat. So there is a massive plus in sport happening at this time.
Yeah, and the Olympics were fantastic, weren't they? I mean, Sydney here we were into our maybe 5th week of lockdown, and suddenly 2 weeks of, wall-to-wall sport in the Olympics. And of course, compared to 20 years ago when you're watching the Olympics and you normally would have one channel, and just luck of the draw if you got the right sport on there at any given time. Now you can access every single sport at all times, and it was just fantastic. So, they've worked pretty hard in Australia here to keep the rugby league going, to keep the AFL going. Super Rugby happened this year, of course. So, there've been a lot of people making a lot of effort to keep it going, and I'm sure that the TV ratings reflect the support that the public has given it.
Yeah, but I'm disappointed though. My first team, West Tigers, they've crashed out in the NRL that you're mentioning, and Warriors also, they dropped out today. I just saw one of our fans asking a question. What's the best rugby team, the Super Rugby team in New Zealand, in your opinion?
I don't think I even need to. Here it is.
In the past or now? Come on. There you go.
Yeah, look, I mean, the Crusaders won the domestic New Zealand competition, and I think realistically that's what the New Zealand teams were gunning for. That's the hard one. It's the 2 rounds home and away. So to win that was really the premium one. In saying that, the Trans-Tasman was a really good competition as well. So it's not like the Crusaders didn't want to win that. They were unbeaten in that. They just didn't get enough points to make it into the final. But I thought what was wonderful was we saw of the 10 teams across Australia and New Zealand, 6 of them played in finals this year in the Australian, New Zealand and Trans-Tasman. So, there were 6 different teams played in finals and out of the 10 available. So I thought it was really, really good for the sport. Good spread.
There's a bit of politics, Mertz, that it doesn't escape even the rest of us outside of New Zealand. But everyone loves to hate the Crusaders. Was that the same during your time?
Before you answer, Mertz, we got another friend joining. So let's get him on and then go from there. It's actually our Honourable Sports Minister, Namal Rajapaksa. But here, we're all sportsmen. So let's keep it simple.
Chilling with Russell.
Welcome. To introduce you guys, this is Namal, Andrew Mehrtens. Namal, actually, we're keeping it as sportsmen, so no protocols here, Namal. I hope you don't mind that. Of course, you must be knowing Shanaka Amarasinghe.
Yes,
to introduce Namal, one of our former rugby captains and our present sports minister. So another machang for you from Sri Lanka, Mertz.
Hello, machang. Nice to see you. We actually spoke. We spoke a few years back, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I think.
Yes.
And I still haven't managed to get to Sri Lanka yet, but I know that there is a very, very proud rugby history there. So it's that's fantastic, and I hope things go well. I mean, I don't know what the latest is on the Asian Rugby Championship for this year, but
yeah.
Well, go on.
Not a lot, guys. Not a lot, because I think the Asian rugby is a bit hamstrung at the moment to try and get the competitions going. So we're trying to get things domestically going as well. And there's a game being played as we speak, really, with between the CHNFC, which is a local club team, and the local Air Force team, trying to get rugby back on track. As you guys were saying earlier, live sport is something that keeps people a little less depressed in these times. So that's what we're trying to generate here. And I think Namal's brother is playing today as well.
Yeah, we're trying to get it back on track, because especially with the quarantine law and on the situation going in the subcontinental, it's a bit tough for most of the contact sports. But we have been fortunate that we managed to maintain a couple of bubbles even at the time we speak. As he correctly mentioned, we have a rugby bubble going on one side and the cricket bubble going on in Kandy. And we have a couple of athletes touring Kenya junior sector, and then we are on a bubble for 3-on-3 for basketball. So we are trying to make things moving forward. But at the same time, from the rugby point of view, I mean, we are looking at even getting up to the extent of hosting the Asian 7th Circuit in Sri Lanka, if the region is ready to come and play in Sri Lanka. So we are still in verge of getting into the system when it comes to contact sports, but other sports such as cricket, and starting from LPL to last year, I think we were one of the first countries in the subcontinent to host franchise cricket after the pandemic. So it has we have been doing really well on that front. So rugby, yeah, I mean, we are looking at with the new bubble that we created for CH and Air Force for a domestic friendly game, and then maybe move on from there for a couple of 7 circuit as well.
Are you still training?
But before the
No, I'm out of training now. I'm getting too old.
You look like you should
before
be.
COVID.
I started surfing now, so I just try to keep myself fit on the beach.
Before COVID, though, much we used to have a rugby sevens tournament where we had foreign players come and play. DJ Forbes spent a lot of time, and there were a few other New Zealanders as well, right? So hopefully, when things lift, we'll get back there. And now you have a few Matangs. We'll certainly have you over, I'm sure.
I to get him down for the Carlton Sevens, and then that was the conversation we had last time when we spoke. So we do have
absolutely. I'm really passionate about the growth of the sport globally as well, and particularly so many countries in Asia and in the subcontinent with the population where there is the history and the tradition. Obviously, the schools in Colombo that have the long history of rugby, and so sometimes people are surprised when. I've been lucky enough to go to places like Bangkok, where they have the King's College there, and as well, and some of these schools that have just got the amazing history. So leveraging off that and making rugby truly global is really a real passion of mine.
Yeah, and one thing we propose to the Asian Rugby is to let us host Asian sevens club circuit, like the Super 15, where you go for 15s in the Southern Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere, and now Japan is involved. So I propose them to have a 7 circuits on a similar format, to starting from Sri Lanka and to maybe play in other couple or 2 countries. So in that way, the Asians, because Asian body structure will support more into the 7th circuit. And if we get into a proper international 7th circuit, combining all the clubs in the region, at least number 1 and 2 clubs from Sri Lanka to Hong Kong, Japan, Korea. Then you can look at countries like Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia. That will be a very, very strong 7th circuit in the Asian continental. So that will give the boys from our part to play against Japanese and Korean high professional athletes. So in that way, it will help us to develop not only us, actually, countries like India, Pakistan, even Singapore or Malaysia will get a better exposure when it comes to 7. So we are in talks with Asian Rugby. So hopefully, once things settle down in the region, at least next year, that's one of the main things that I'm looking forward to drive with Asian Rugby.
Speaking of body structures, Namal, Mehrtens, you were seen as a smaller player in your time, in your career. I mean, you still managed 70 games despite being a small player who didn't tackle. But do you think there's still a place for guys like you in international rugby, guys who are skilled but are not huge and spend most of their time in the gym?
Yes, I think so. I think, training methods are such that if you're prepared to put in the work and do the training, you can get the strength no matter, how big you are. And, I remember we went through a period at one point, probably in the early 2000s or late 90s, where you wanted to be bulky, you wanted to be heavier. The heavier, the better. But the strength of players now is such that if you pack on an extra 5 or 6 kgs, it doesn't matter because they throw those weights around in the gym all the time. So what you need to be now is you need to be lean and you need to be the right body weight for you, as strong as you can be, but the right body weight. So, if I was playing these days, I'd have to be probably 4 or 5 kgs below what I was playing in my time. And I was, as you say, one of the smaller guys there. So, there's no impediment. There are smaller guys, although to be fair, they look smaller on the TV sometimes than they actually are in real life. Damien McKenzie is a good example. And rugby's always been that great game where there are so many specific roles to play that you didn't have to be one specific body type. You just had to be really good at what you did. And that's the beauty of the sport, that everybody works in well together. And, some players will do jobs that none of the other players can do, and vice versa, and you'll help one another out. So, but I was one of the smaller guys. In terms of tackling, I was the goal kicker. So I thought I got enough attention on me. And
Yeah.
I didn't want to be greedy. And I also knew there were a lot of guys who really liked tackling. And I just thought, who am I to spoil their fun, you know? So the courses again.
That's a good one. And one thing about training, of course, the problem we face in our part of the world is that the training structure from the national high performers does not go down to the school sector. So what the mistake we do is we allow the school sector to carry on their own training and physical condition training program. So that is not incompatible with the high performance program. So when these kids grow up from school sector to club sector and to the national level, their strength and condition is not in par for that particular circuit. So I think what we have to try and work around is that get the high performance working schedule to be started from the school sector. So in that way, these kids will be more physically and mentally prepared coming up on the ladder up to the national level. I mean, it's an issue with all sports. I think Russel will be able to answer it better, because when you cricket, even look at athletics, this is the biggest challenge we face when it comes to athletes about home and away games. You know, when we do at home, we perform extremely well. But when you go out of the country, the physical and the mental strength, which plays a major part of your event or your competition, is not there. Simply, I personally think that is because of the training that they get in the junior level is not compatible on a structured manner up to the high performance in the national level.
That's the culture, isn't it?
It's part of the culture as well, because the school sector here is dominated by winning mentality, which is good. I really love it. I mean, I played on that kind of a mentality, but that is one aspect of it. But when it comes to athletes, as Luke clearly said about physical fitness and conditioning, there has to be a structured program for all sports, starting from junior level to taking up the ladder to the higher sector. Then you are physically and mentally fit enough to take part in any form of competition at any level.
I think, Russell, you'll know that as well, because from the guys who you played with, I mean, you were part of the Sri Lankan setup for a while. So you would have known that some of the players who came from the outstations, the first time they saw a weights room was probably when they joined the Sri Lanka team.
Yeah, so these are practical issues that we tend to have, which, of course, a lot of work to be done to build those areas, and I'm sure the guys are onto it. I think there's a lot of structural changes coming in, and we're trying our best. But where I'd like to go with this question is, how do things flow so easily for New Zealand when it comes to rugby? Everyone's eating and drinking rugby, even from a younger age. How does that happen? And the competition is so great, Mehrtens Machang.
Well, mate, I think that we're lucky in New Zealand in rugby in that a whole bunch of things have come together. You know, we embraced the sport as a country from very early on, and we're only a young country. You know, I mean, Māori people have been in New Zealand probably for at least 900 years,
and more sheep than people.
Sorry.
More sheep than people.
There are. I mean, there are fewer sheep than there used to be. There used to be 60 million sheep, and now only 30 million. So, so it's harder to get relationships now as well. Look, as a country, I guess on the global stage, we're from being settled by Europeans as well, less than 200 years ago. We're still a young country in that regard, and playing that sport, Maori people, the indigenous people, really took to rugby, the physicality of it. The European settlers loved it as well. It sort of worked in with their psyche around, physicality and working on the land and things like that. So, and then we found we were reasonably good at it, and it was something that we found out early on. We could give Mother England a bit of a bleeding nose, and so it appealed to us, and it just became one of those things that everyone played. It had a very big community focus, bringing people in. We're a very rural country, but it would bring people together as a community, sort of a hub on a Saturday, and it's just gone like that. But we're small enough to have had it centrally run, and that no matter whether you're playing or coaching a school team or a junior club team or a senior club team or a provincial team, everything is around rugby being better, the sport being the most important. And so it's not perfect, but it's worked pretty well for us in that regard. And one of the things I like in the last 15 years of the All Blacks' unprecedented success, 2 World Cups in a row that they won in 11 and 15. But what the example that they've set for rugby teams around the globe is that it doesn't have to always be really complex things that you do. The essence of the game is there is physicality, but the essence of the game is moving the ball, catching and passing. And if that's a large part of the success of the game, then you have to be able to do that really, really well. And it's a real basic, but doing the basics well at a really high level of accuracy rather than trying to do something really, really complex. I think that's what the All Blacks have set as an example, moving the ball, catching and passing. If you can't catch and pass accurately, doesn't matter what else you do in the game, you won't be able to succeed. So, like I say, the physicality comes into it as well. So I think our chain, it moves up and down. All Black selectors and coaches will still go out and listen to club coaches and provincial coaches and whatnot, schools coaches, to find out what their experiences are, what they're seeing from their players, what they're finding successful. So the information goes up and down the chain as well. So, like I say, it's not perfect, but it works for us in rugby, like it does in other sports for other countries. I mean, the numbers that you see and the efficiency that you see in cricketing nations, as you say. Now, I wanted to bring up cricket because I know New Zealand's going pretty well at the moment too. Rugby's kind of become our thing, and while it's not everybody's choice to play, it's kind of the whole country's thing.
That's interesting. You mentioned the cricket as well, and the success of the cricket, because we've got 2 very interesting leaders to talk about, and I'm sure Namal will be interested in the leadership aspect of this as well, Mehrtens, because you've got Richie McCaw, who oversaw that period for New Zealand in the rugby, and you've got Kane Williamson now, who's taken over from Stephen Fleming, and is one of the outstanding leaders of all time, I think, in New Zealand sport, and certainly in cricket. What is it that breeds guys who are this humble, so good at what they do, and still inspire their charges? Is that normal in New Zealand?
Well, we like to think so, but these guys have even more reason to not be humble in a way, because they're outstanding. Kane Williamson, you mentioned, McCaw, Kieran Reid, those sort of players. They're once in a lifetime, if not once ever, sort of players. So, but funnily enough, their humility is on a level with their ability. A lot of it's around probably the influences that they have when they're coming through as young players. A lot depends on the leadership, the senior players in the group when those players are coming through. So I'm sure they'll say that they've been lucky to an extent in the situation that they've come through. They've been nurtured, they've been afforded the respect from senior guys, but at the same time, the senior guys have made it clear that there are standards expected. So, I'm sure they'll say that. Kane Williamson, came through taking over from Brendan McCullum, who'd really established what I think for cricket, and I'm no expert on cricket, but what I identified as very rugby values within cricket. Now, I know they're really different sports, and they're both team sports, but there's so many things in cricket that are individual actions where, you might have a teammate, but he can't really, or she can't really help you a lot. Your batsman down the other end is not going to help you face a ball that's ripping through at 160 kilometres an hour. So, while there might be combinations in the running or whatnot, there's a whole big series of individual actions in cricket. And I mean that with respect. It's just an observation. But what I remember seeing with Brendan McCullum's New Zealand team was a really tangible kind of teamliness, and that was kind of shown out when they were in the field. Their combinations, fielding, when they would chase down the ball, even though someone else is chasing it out of the boundary, another one would chase out with them and they flick it back. And that's become pretty standard in cricket, but it wasn't always the way, Russell, was it? When you look back 20, 25 years, there'd be one bloke chasing the ball out of the boundary. He's got to heave it all the way in. So the little things that I saw in Brendan McCullum's New Zealand cricket team have flowed on, and Kane Williamson came through that. So it's really important to have good senior mentors in the team when you're coming through, I think.
Yeah, I think at the same time, it's the commitment and also identifying the priorities and which area that you want to concentrate on a particular time. Whether it's 15th World Cup, or whether it's 7th World Cup, or whether it's 7th World Circuit, Olympics, or whether it's Test cricket, T20, or etc. So I think these leaders have identified when they were asked to lead, what was their ultimate target and goal, and they worked around that 24 hours to get into those, make sure that they deliver on what they're being entrusted. So that is one of the key success stories. They have been there for a long time and knowing what they want to do and where they want to go. So as a result, end of the day, they both managed to achieve what they want. They did not diversify in between or look into other aspects halfway through, thinking, okay, let's get into another segment now. No, they kept that out and they just concentrated on one particular sector of the sport. So they made sure that they deliver what they have been given.
I think also there's been a big focus in New Zealand teams in particular. We do like to be a bit understated in New Zealand. We are a small country, so by and large, everyone knows everyone or is really closely connected to everybody else, and you can't get too arrogant or cocky in that sort of a situation. It can be a hindrance sometimes. I think sometimes we're too understated. We're too intent on downplaying any success. So that's something as a country maybe we all need to get a bit better at celebrating success without seeing it as being arrogance. But it's just around getting in and doing your job. And there's been a big focus from both the All Blacks and in the New Zealand cricket team, I think, to say, look, one quote I had from Steve Hansen, who's been, coach of the All Blacks for a long time up until 2019, was, and Wayne Smith similarly, we're not special people. We're normal people trying to do normal things extraordinarily well. We're not extraordinary people. And there's a big focus on just saying, look, no matter how many Instagram followers you've got or how many times you're on TV or whatever, that in itself doesn't make you a good person or whatever. Your actions are what you'll be judged on and stuff like that. So, there is a big focus on being a better person. And of course, these days in the professional sports environment, the care that you get and the mentoring around life off the field and off the training pitch as well, it's all encompassing. And so they work very hard on that.
We hear a lot of things being said about being an All Black is special. So the values that are expected of you, what are you under pressure at certain stage? It also comes down to not only your performance, but your off-field lifestyle as well. Is there something extraordinary that's expected of you that you need to give?
I think what's been consistent from, even an era when I was playing in which you couldn't say was as successful as the most recent era. Even so, we were intent on always trying to be better. Doesn't matter how good a game you've had, or there's always a way you can be better. And just like when you lose, there's always something that you can take positive out of the game, even in the disappointment of losing or performing poorly. So I guess it's about being pretty objective, but always wanting to be better. And the All Black coaches, I think, set that standard by always trying to learn themselves. Doesn't matter how successful they've been as a team, they're always keen to find out where they can be better, whether that's looking at other sports teams, whether it's looking at corporates who they see as being very successful, any sort of group, a symphony orchestra or whatever, all those sort of things that are bringing people together for a collective effort and to achieve a collective goal. They try and take all those influences and learn. So they are very keen to get across. They're always keen to learn. And I think that's an important mentality to have, no matter how well things have gone. It doesn't make you a wonderful person just having won a sports match, but B, you can always be better, and you should never feel that you're there,
How much has Gilbert Inoka been part of that success in the last few years? I don't know whether you trained under him, whether he was part of the setup when you were around, but he was pretty central to the 11 and 15 teams, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's massive. He's worked alongside Wayne Smith, who in my mind is the best rugby coach ever. Gilbert was a former New Zealand volleyball captain who did a couple of psychology degrees as well, and worked initially individually with players in the rugby environment, a little bit with team, but then he became more and more involved with the team. And it wasn't always about just being a shrink. He was a very, very personable guy. He's a guy who always came in to help the team at the start of a journey, start of a campaign, to help them distill their values and be able to pull together all the different influences within the team, so that everybody felt they had a bit of ownership on the direction the team was headed, how they were going to live, the standards they were going to have. So it was crucial in that. And then, of course, on a one-on-one basis as well, just helping people through it. Everyone's different, as we know. While you might have very similar personalities broadly in a sports team, because they've all got to that point from having, fairly similar characteristics like motivation, etc. But in saying that, they deal with things differently. And so, having someone like Gilbert there to individually kind of mentor players, as well as be there as kind of a group overseer as well, he's been incredibly important. And the more we go on, same as in the rest of the world, the more we go on understanding more about mental health and the mental aspects of life, let alone of sport, the better we get at doing it. So he's been a huge part of the All Blacks for the last probably 20 years.
Russell, what about Tom Moody? What about Tom Moody in your 2007? I think that was probably the best ODI team we have, even though Adam Gilchrist got one over on us in the final. And I think Namal and his high-performance team and SLC have got him back involved in cricket as cricket director here, which I think is a great move. But how was Tom in that same role for you guys?
Well, Tom was good. He understood what we did have. He understood our culture. He understood the characters in the team and how that they needed to be handled differently. So if I give you an example of handled differently, now we all know Murali likes to yap a bit, and he gets into the players as such. So Moody would make sure that when we are batting, that Murali sits next to him and he does not have the opportunity to interact with the others, because whatever Murali says can sometimes get the batters feeling jittery. Or you played a shit shot. You played, you did that. So it's sometimes a little uncomfortable. So Moody had that type of understanding, which he did hold together. And as Mert said, and Namal mentioned earlier, we had a good core team who had been together for 7-8 years before that. Our younger players were Malinga, Dilhara Fernando, Dilshan. So that's a great combination we did have. But yet the person in charge to understand the strengths, weaknesses of even the individuals was crucial, I thought, at that stage. So hopefully Moody can, along with the others, get our cricket back on track. So we're hoping to see the changes soon. Going back to Mertz and rugby. The
other thing is, what we mistake in most of the time is when it comes to the national sports, the national level. It's not only about coaching, it's about mentoring and managing your players, because you cannot expect an unfit or under-talented athlete or a sportsman to come into the national squad and then expect him to learn to kick or pass or score runs. So basics has to be done at the younger age. That's what I was talking about, the entire process of building these athletes. So when it comes to the national level, it's more of like managing the player and understanding what your combinations are, and what are the weaknesses and strengths you have in your individual athletes, depending on the game that you want to perform in the evening. So I think it's more like a mentoring, managing, and get these kids together to play on a very high intensive game.
On that note, I'd like to get your thoughts on how the game has evolved, rugby, Mertz, to the time you played to now. Is it faster? Is it more intense? What are the changes?
Before you answer that, Mertz, you played earlier, before professionalism, and you played through professionalism. So just include that as well, if you could.
I was probably, I mean, my timing was very lucky. I started playing with the All Blacks in 1995. 1 year later, the game went officially professional. Now, when I say professional, in the late 90s, we were professional in our minds because we were training twice a day versus 3 times a week that it used to be. And also, we didn't have to work another job. We were able to earn our money from rugby. So that's what we termed professional. I wouldn't really say, looking back, that was professional, because now they are. The whole day and the whole week is geared around their preparation and their performance and their recovery. So whether it's nutrition, whether it's the physical training, whether it's mental training, whether it's analysis, whether it's also downtime and having that balance as well. You know, everything is professional about these guys in the rugby environment. Same probably with every sport, that the professionalism has increased. But with rugby, it's increased massively because we're only, 25 years into official professional rugby. So I was lucky. And certainly, yes, Russell, it's the game is faster every year. It's more physical. It's more skillful. And, these kids are all coming through, developing their own game through to that point. So they're used to it. But for an oldie like me, I try to imagine lasting 20 seconds on the field these days. I don't think I could. And it's different from a structural point of view. And, where our rugby, we were starting to get more efficient with using groups and being a bit more efficient with our movement versus, in the 80s, for example, the forward pack went everywhere. There'd be a breakdown over here and the forward pack would go there and clean out. And then it would come back and the forward pack would go to there. We started changing a little bit, so you might only send 2 or 3 players to a breakdown, not a whole bunch of 8. So then you've got the other players available for the next phase. That's to a whole new level now. So it's, I haven't stayed in coaching. The last time I was involved in sort of coaching rugby was 2013 in France, and it's moved on in the 8 years since. And so, the structures are fairly unrecognizable to me. I couldn't take you through and say, look, I can coach a team. But it is geared around the players being divided, the 15 players being divided into different groups, where you can have guys in different pods that all have the skills to clean out, but they all have the skill to pass the ball and run with the ball as well. But you have complementary skill sets within those smaller groups that can play those different pods. And so you don't have to have one player running from here to get to a breakdown, then across here as well. He just sticks there and waits till the ball comes back out, and then he's got energy to run. So, yeah, it evolves constantly. And, I mean, I'm, again, no expert on cricket, but the very little that I see in cricket, the increase year by year. I mean, when we think back to the 80s, remember back to the days where Big Lance Cairns was clobbering 6 sixes out of the MCG, the number of times we saw athletic catches in those days compared to what is just standard in the T20s and stuff like that, the athleticism on the boundary and keeping the ball in, and unbelievable. So, every sport just progresses constantly, doesn't it?
And most importantly, I think the main factor is the players are becoming better athletes, I reckon. You touched on 1995. A lot of our fans want to know about this 1995 World Cup, especially. There were some fantastic players around you. Jonah Lomu. Come on, fill us in how life was at that stage.
It was unbelievable. It was my first year in the All Blacks, and all of a sudden, I was pinching myself to even get in the All Blacks, let alone get flown to South Africa for a World Cup that was just, unbelievably exciting and colourful and fantastic. And, disappointed though we were to lose the final, it was a very big moment in sport. Nelson Mandela was unbelievable. I mean, they made a movie about it, of course, Invictus. We didn't know at the time what was going on behind the scenes in South Africa, but we were quite aware of the change in South Africans. Normally, because it was such a white sport in South Africa, All Blacks had always gone over there and got huge support from the African population, what they called the coloured, the mixed population as well. They all supported the All Blacks always, and we had that when we first got to South Africa in '95. But as the tournament progressed, and as Nelson Mandela managed to galvanise the whole country behind a team that had previously been held up as an incredibly powerful symbol of racism, the whole country went with that team. And so when we got to the final, we knew that the whole of South Africa was against us. We couldn't even rely on the traditional support base for the All Blacks. But, yeah, mate, it was just a fantastic tournament to be involved in. We played some great rugby. Jonah Lomu took probably the sport and put it on a global stage single-handedly. He was just a beast. You know, he was 2 meters tall. He was 120 kilograms. And he could run 100 meters in just under 11 seconds. And he was angry. He wasn't an angry person. He was the most beautiful person ever. But you give him the ball on the field and he was angry. And you know what? Even as his teammate, you didn't want to be nearby when he starts his limbs going and he starts running. And he would just knock people like Skittles. But he couldn't do it against the South Africans. They saw it as a physical challenge. They were a very physical team. And they saw this colossus coming through the tournament, being renowned across the world and everyone adoring him. And all it said to the Springboks was, there's the guy we want to tackle the most. And they just chopped him down and they chopped us down all over the place in the final. And, it was no consolation to think we were part of an event that transcended sport, but that's what it was. It was quite amazing to be a part of.
You were overwhelming favourites going into that tournament, Andrew. And as the fly half, I guess you've got the best read of the game. And when did you realize that this was probably getting away from you?
Well, it was interesting because we played, funnily enough, as the tournament progressed, yes, we became the favourites. But coming in, the All Blacks had lost to England the last time they played. They'd lost a test to South. I think they'd drawn a test series against South Africa. They'd lost to France in '94, lost the Bledisloe Cup in '94. So we actually flew under the radar a little bit when we first got there. But as the tournament went on and we were very fit and we tried to move
that's before you debuted, right?
We ran other teams off their feet. So we got this huge swell of support saying, the All Blacks are the team to beat. So when we got to the final, we had played a certain way of rugby all the way through the tournament that had been phenomenally successful and enjoyable to play and very, very effective. And in the final, we couldn't get points from playing that game. Now, I guess the conundrum at that point is, how long do you persist with the same strategy but hope that your execution gets better? Or when do you change to a strategy that actually is untested for us? We weren't sure if we were good at it. We weren't even sure potentially if shutting down the game and not trying to play our natural game, we didn't even know if we would be actually good at it or if it would be effective against South Africa. So at the time, we kind of felt, keep playing our game, keep giving it everything. And at some point, we hope that our execution will improve or, that things actually happen for us. We felt for a long time like we had South Africa almost on the brink of not capitulating, but certainly we felt like at some point we'd be able to break through and just get that decisive break, that one action that might break the game open, and it never came, and they were too good.
Yeah, that was a hell of a game to watch. I still remember it. And I remember your head hanging, I think, when that drop goal went just a bit wide. What did that feel like, Mehrtens? I mean, you've got 25 years to look back on it now. How big was that?
Well, I mean, it turned out into a game that was going ahead by increments of 3 points, of course. And I think at the end of normal time, it was 9-9. At the end of normal time, the 80 minutes, yes, I had maybe my fourth or fifth attempt to kick a drop goal. And all I can remember from that particular one, because I'd missed a couple of other ones previously, but this one that was right in front, I could just feel Joost van der Westhuizen, who was the South African number 9, I could feel his eyes boring an absolute hole in me. And he came out straight out of the gates really quickly to charge the kick down, and it just did enough. I guess I looked up at him rather than watching the ball and skied the ball. So, I mean, at that stage, all you can do when you make a mistake or it's disappointing is, move on. The most important thing is the next action that you do. So all you can do is move on and focus on the next task.
Yeah.
Another 20 minutes to play in the extra time. We weren't able to get there. Afterwards, of course, you relive it in your mind and you think what might have been, how would I have done that better? And you start thinking about your teammates when you're in a position like that. All of them were fantastic to me because they know the goal kicker is in a pretty lonely position in rugby. It's one of the rare times that you probably feel like a batsman in cricket where you're on your own, using every damn ball. So the goal kicker's there, and it's pretty lonely at times, and you can be the hero or you can be the zero very easily. The team tends not to blame you. That's why you see them so often get around the kicker at the end if he's missed the goal. But I start thinking, personally, I was disappointed that I hadn't done, what I felt I could do or what I was there to do. Feel like you let down your teammates. You feel like you've let down the country. It's like I said before, it's what we have. Rugby's our thing. And, there were plenty of New Zealanders came across to South Africa. Probably some of them spend almost a life savings on coming across and supporting the All Blacks. And they go home disappointed too. So that's probably where your thoughts turn at that stage.
Do you remember that tournament, Namal? I asked him that because he's a little younger to us, Mertz. You are born 73, I'm born 73. These guys are younger, they're babies.
I'm just 5 years younger than you, man.
The grade, I don't know, I was in grade 4, 2 or 3. This is long years ago. It's 95, right? So I entered school I was in grade 2 or 3. But yeah, I remember Jonah, I met him in Cardiff when he was playing for Cardiff Blues at his last part of his career, because I was at the Cardiff University at that time playing rugby. So I got hold of him a couple of times at the UWIC University at the training venue. So when he does his speed training and strength training in the evenings. So it's a great experience, and how he trained, how even at that level, when he gave up on All Blacks and coming back to England to play rugby and end up in Cardiff Blues, how he trained. And amount of hard work, they put into training at that level was very much. I think it's something for youngsters to learn on their way up the ladder.
In talking about defeats, Mertz, I mean, you had Walter Little outside you. You had Frank Bunce. You had the greatest ever Jonah Lomu. You had Jeff Wilson on the other wing. You had Glenn Osborne. But if you've got all those guys, and then you've got Zinzan Brook, Michael Jones, Josh Cronfeld, all these guys, and if you still lose a game, you've got to think that's destiny, isn't it? It was just South Africa's moment, and you've got to be comfortable with that.
Well, it really was. But I mean, to be fair, you look through their team, and it was a pretty fantastic team as well.
Team too, yes.
Small, Chester Williams, Yapi Mulder, Henny LaRue, Joel Stransky, US Van der Vestes. And so, I didn't really want to look at the forwards much. I wouldn't to this day know who was in the forwards from the Springboks. I was spending most of my game trying to stay away from them. But they were an amazing team. Actually, funnily enough, in 2015 in the World Cup in London, I happened to get invited along to an event where it was a reunion of the South African 95 team 20 years on. And I've been at a neutral table there. I think I was the only New Zealander there, and I think they were very, very nice to me, the Boks, that night, as they should have been, because gave them the victory.
Well, we all end up making friends after we played, not during our careers. Actually, we're making friends even in our sport and other sports as time goes on, which is very unique. Any more questions on 95? Because I want to get a question out of an answer out of Mertz on the haka and what it actually means, the feeling when you're doing it, and what do you see in the opposition? What do you expect of them? What are you trying? You're trying to scare them or what?
Well, as a team, no, we're not trying to get any gain for ourselves or anything for to intimidate the opposition. I mean, look at me, I'm not going to intimidate anyone. So, in saying that, I grew up in a little Maori town, as I mentioned before. So, while I'm not Maori, I was speaking Maori through to when I was 11 or 12, and fully immersed in the culture, which I think is amazing. And it is our unique culture in the world. If we don't have the Maori culture in New Zealand, then we're like a little Australia. And Australia itself, without their Aboriginal culture, is like a little United States, maybe, So our Maori culture is unique, and why we're doing the haka is to express our pride in our country and express, I guess, our uniqueness. The haka in Maori culture has a number of functions. It can be used to celebrate a certain milestone. It can be used to pay respect. Yes, at the base of it does derive from a warlike chant or a war chant. And inevitably, because the use of the feet stamping on the ground is the timing, inevitably it comes from the paddling of war canoes. So they're paddling the canoes into war, and they've got the leader like a cox in rowing, who's chanting the timing, and they're often responses. And the kamate haka, which has been traditional for the All Blacks for probably over 100 years, just came about, I guess, as a bit of a quirk done on a tour of England, decades ago. And it turned into something that got done traditionally only overseas initially by the All Blacks. It wasn't before every game, but it developed into being for every game. And the background to the haka, interestingly, this haka, is it was composed by a Māori chief who had led his tribe waging war against all the other Māori tribes of New Zealand. And so the other Māori tribes banded together and took on this tribe, the Ngāti Toa, and the chief was on the run, and he got hidden as he ran through a village, chased by the mob, got hidden by a woman who was weaving a flax mat or something. And the haka is his way of articulating, I'm dead, no, I'm alive, I've been saved. And so he composed the kamate haka. But the problem there has been potentially that it does come from this one tribe in New Zealand. And at one point, a lot of the Māori in New Zealand said, well, the kamate haka is not out. It shouldn't be a national haka. That's from a different tribe. And you know what? It was a tribe that waged war. So the All Blacks, based on that, and also wanting to make a break from the tradition that we had over a while of losing in World Cups, even though we were favourites, they wanted to establish their own haka, which talked about the pride and the heritage of the All Blacks, the pride in their country. And that's where the kapa or pango haka came about. So every match, the leadership group will make a decision as to whether they go with the traditional kamate haka or the kapao pango, which is the All Blacks special haka. So it's, we always felt like it's the other team's prerogative how they want to receive that, because it is a challenge. It's not, we're not trying to get an advantage from it, but it is a challenge, and we always felt you should be able to accept that challenge how you like. If you want to get up close and personal, you should be able to. Unfortunately, these days, they've made it sterile by keeping 20 meters between the teams. But we always thought, you do what you like. The French, in recent times, have formed a flying wedge with their T-shirts, red, white and blue, to show their pride in France. England in the World Cup in 2019 formed a big semicircle, which basically meant that the All Blacks couldn't just eyeball one group there in front. They really spread it out, and it took the All Blacks a bit by surprise, and it had a good effect for the English team. So our view was always you accept this challenge how you like, and we're not trying to get an advantage from it.
I saw the Aussies last week. They formed a boomerang. That's right, which is cool. They face it. Yeah.
The thing is, I mean, it is a bit of an indulgence on a world sports stage, because you don't see other sports having this sort of a thing. We know in rugby we have the Fijians do their thimbi, Tonga and Samoa also have similar, but it is a bit of an indulgence, So as an opposition team, the haka's coming, it's there for that time after the anthems have been sung. You need to use that as an opportunity to say, right, let's band together. How do we use this moment as a chance for us to, unify ourselves and think about the game ahead? That's why I like to see, however they do it, bring it on,
You sound like a bit of a student of history, Mertz.
Sorry?
You sound like a bit of a student of history, and is that correct to say?
Oh, look, yeah, I do. I love my rugby history. I grew up in the country, New Zealand. So, like I say, I was immersed with Māori history. I love the fact that it's unique to New Zealand. It's very similar to other Pacific cultures, of course, but, that's our culture. But also I love rugby history. There maybe wasn't a lot to do out in the country except play sport and look into the history of it. And I've always loved it. The rivalry with South Africa is fantastic. More recently, Australia and New Zealand has been that big Bledisloe Cup rivalry. But anything with a long tradition behind it in sport, I love. And cricket's obviously got a huge amount of tradition there as well. I mean, I couldn't imagine what it's like to play at Lords. I mean, I've dislocated my shoulder on the SCG, but playing at Lords must be just something else.
It's always special, Lords, and there's a 2-meter dip if you haven't heard about it from each end. So it just goes down like that. But wherever you go to Lords, it certainly is something different. Namal, anything you want to add? Because we've been chatting for a while. We can do this again some other time. Maybe I have to let Andrew go.
No, it's a great to catch up with you guys, and we'll definitely keep in touch. A lot to exchange, and I'm sure we can have Andrew back home, back in Sri Lanka sometime soon once things settle down. So we can chat in person and also see how we can work together on developing rugby. In fact, I was having a long conversation with the mission in Sri Lanka about sending a couple of our junior sevens kids to New Zealand, at least 10 or 15 for a couple of years on a residential training program for 6 to 1 year. So if that works out well, I mean, we'll be sending over a couple of our kids to New Zealand for a long-term training program. So which I think will help us to develop a bunch of set for 2024 Olympics.
And I apologise, Namal, because I've spoken too much. I mean, I yap, so I apologise. But it would be a massive thrill to ever get to Sri Lanka. Like I said, I'm passionate about the developing nations in rugby. And, you know, sometimes it's about coaching the coaches because, you know, if you want to get the kids involved, like for me, I'd love to get involved with coaching another sport for kids that I follow. And if there are easy materials and tools to access just to tell me what are the basic skills, what are some simple drills. So sometimes, you know, coaching the coaches and bringing your IP in that way, because ultimately they're the ones on the ground getting the kids into the game, getting them to enjoy the sport. I mean, that's what you want to do when you're playing sport, is enjoy it. See that you're improving on the basics, and that's the best way to enjoy the sport, I think. So if there's any way to help with that, certainly love to. And I know New Zealand is very keen on doing what they can with their coaching IP around the place.
Thank you, man.
How far is the Carlton Sevens? How far away is that? Do we need COVID to disappear, or are there any plans?
Well, we want to play this year. Actually, I want to change the format a bit. As I said, I want to get a couple of Asian clubs involved and play a club sevens tournament circuit in Sri Lanka, and then maybe look at countries like Maldives where they can be partner with us. So we can play one leg in Maldives, Sri Lanka, then Hong Kong or Singapore. So we are in talks with the Asian rugby. So hopefully next year we'll find a window.
Next year.
That kind of a calendar, because Carlton itself, what we had was 10 clubs based in Sri Lanka. So we can have that on a different footing and then select the best two moving up to the Asian circuit, and that will allow more the regional rugby to grow as well, because I personally believe Sri Lanka has a lot to offer especially the South region, and when it comes to rugby, and that will help to grow the sport in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, and Maldives. So in that way, that will create more awareness, and as you know, the markets are huge when it comes to branding, marketing, broadcasting. You know, we need that exposure, get China involved with it. So when the Asian circuit comes, you're talking 2.53 billion people starting to get into rugby. You know, that's what we want to build from Sri Lanka. So I'm very positive about it. So we'll see. Next year we will do something about it.
Shanaka?
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Mehrtens was the guy I grew up watching. I wasn't a fly half, but Michael Jones, Josh Gronfeld, and Zinzan Brook were the guys I idolized. But Mehrtens was a staple throughout all those All Black teams I know through by heart. And it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you today. I catch up again, Mehrtens, and I hope we'll do this again.
Guys, it's been fantastic seeing you, and hope, like you say, the initiative with Sri Lanka in terms of the rugby, fantastic. What we're also finding out here is that women love the sport, and we're now thankfully living in an era where you don't really have men's and women's sports. Well, obviously, you've seen in women's cricket the explosion there, rugby as well, and my daughter has been begging to play rugby as well, and it's fantastic to involve the whole family if they can all get access to the same sport. So, the potential there is unlimited really as well. So hopefully we can all be involved in something special going forward.
For sure. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Namal, for your time and joining with us. Shanaka as well. Mehrtens, Machang. So much to talk about. But time is flying, so we must do this again. Hopefully you had a good time with us and interacting with some of our fans. Next time, probably if you do have time, we'll get some of our fans involved as well. They will love it. There's a lot of respect for you. They know who you are. I loved your kicking game, Mehrtens, and I'm sure they'll love you more listening to you now.
You might want to get a proper fly half like Stephen Fleming or Baz McCullum on, mate. I can try and hook you up.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks,
It's a
guys.
great evening. Thank you, guys. We'll catch up again soon. Cheers everyone.
Chilling with Russell.
Receive money from anywhere in the world. Western Union now available at Ceylon Bank.
We are believers in the life-changing power of education. We are AIA Holdings.